All right, hey everyone, this is Ash. Welcome back to the King's Speech. Quick housekeeping items before we dive into the chapter proper. I really have to thank everyone for your support, specifically with regards to last week's stream, because it did a lot better than I thought it would, given how controversial my views were on the final bit, especially because I know looking at Twitter and everywhere else, everyone really loved that Nami scene. And so I was expecting a lot more backlash regarding my thoughts on it, but I was pleasantly surprised by that not being the case. So I really do appreciate all of that. With that said, I have a few additional thoughts as well regarding that. I want to kind of get out there after having seen some other takes from other people on that. So I'll get around to that at the end as well. If there's anyone in the chat at the end, if I forget, just remind me that I said I was going to talk about it, and I'll bring it up. Hopefully, shouldn't forget. With that said, let us dive into One Piece chapter 996, Island of the Strongest. We have reader request Blackbeard and a hippo brushing their teeth by Ebi. I think we've got a request for them before. Tongue tied here. We've had a request from them before. Yeah, it's really amusing. Although this really kind of accentuates how much I despise Blackbeard's weird, spotted, flowery pants. Like, I just don't, except for the beard, I don't really care for his time skip design, but whatever. As always, we have translation by Stephen Paul, lettering by Vanessa Satone. So we pick up where we left off last time with Animal Kingdom, Bath, Forehead. Animal Kingdom, Bath. The hell? That sounds weird. Forehead floor inside the dome. We have, where did that thing come from? That was a Komainu lion dog from the Wano mainland. He's like, Otama, Komachio, thank you. He's like, woof, woof. As they're running through the crowd, and you have Tama going, hang on tight. It's like, Usopp, are you all right? He's like, Pepe, go find that stupid dog in two. And you see Ulti trying to get Pedro to chase after her. And Pedro's like, why me? You do it. And she's like, what? And you have Usopp doing his, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, of course you're not all right. So, but let's focus on the positive. I'm fine. And you see Usopp's completely been knocked out by his fight with Pedro and Ulti. And Nami's bleeding but fine. And you have a hey and a whap. He's like, Otama, how did you get here? And Tama goes, we got a ride on the enemy ship. She's like, what? With the enemy? And you have a key? As, the hell is the monkey's name? Did the monkey have a name? Oh, Hihimaru. You see Hihimaru leaping at Page 1, slashing his sword down. Page kind of just catches it in his mouth. You have Kyo! And you see, keep them at bay for 3 minutes, Hihimaru. And he's like, Key! And you see, what's with this baboon? He's like, wherever in the world did you come from? And you see Nami going, but they're ferocious. That giant monkey's in trouble. And Tama's like, don't belittle his power, O Nami. We came here a samurai. And you have a bang. And you see, we'll talk about it at the end, but like, I bet all the Tama for Straw Hat people are now like losing their minds over that. And you have Right Brain Tower, Central Hallway. As you have Yamada going, that's enough! Get out of the way! And you have him just smashing his club into the armored division, just breaking apart their shields with relative ease. And you have, ugh! It's like, you'll never finish all of us, young master! Ooh. And you see Yamato getting shot with another barrage of explosions and apparently tanking them all. And you have Yamato, you can't keep doing this, sir. You there. If you're, and that's Shinobu going, you there. If you're a samurai, make up your mind. Abandon me and save Lord Momonosuke. Yamato's like, no. Kozuki Oden would never do that. And you see Shinobu being like, why, you stubborn? And you see Sasaki going, if you think you can protect dead weight and still defeat me, I take that as an insult, Master Yamato. And you see he was grabbing his sword and drawing it out. And you see Yamato going, I can't go losing. Oh no, it's Sasaki going, I can't go losing my superb armored division. You've really made a mess of things here. What the hell is that? And you see as as Sasaki's pulling out his sword, you see this weird kind of wrapping or something around it. It's got this weird like kind of striped pattern. And you see Yamato going, Sasaki, he's like, You see Yamato start growling as he starts growing some fangs in his mouth. And you see Sasaki looking shocked and a little bit taken aback as you see, cha-cha-cha. See, legs, look out! And you see Frankie Shogun running in as Momonosuke's like, what? Franosuke? He's like, that you, Momo? And you see, I know who that is. That's Luffy's companion. Frankie the Cyborg, 94 million berries. I've never seen anyone like him in my life. And you see, ha-cha! As Hacha takes his little club above his head and is about to slam it into the floor. And Frankie's like, stop! Just because you can't catch me doesn't mean you should. And you see, Hacha? What is that idiot doing? As he slams his spiked mace right into the floor and smashes through it. And you see, he busted a hole in the floor as Frankie goes flying up into the air. And you see, he's like, oh, right, down was an option. It's like, Momonosuke, Shinobu will escape through the floor. And you see Yamato catching on to both of them as you have, Momo, Shinobu, you okay? Are you caught? It's like, no, we're being rescued. And Frankie's like, who's that? And you see Yamato going, Frankie the Cyborg, take care of this. Luffy put me in charge of these two. And Frankie's like, in that case, sure thing, whoever you are. I super got this. And you see as they're falling, he's like, I ought to thank him. It's like, huh? It's like, just a moment. And Yamato tosses Shinobu and Momo off to the side, readies his club and goes, at least I can take out that one. And you see zap, you see the hockey just building, and you see him doing a flying club slash as you have Nari Kabura arrow. And you see taking Hacha straight in the jaw with a Zadoom. And you see him getting all busted up as he falls and trips. Frankie's like, huh? Did that mystery person do that? Who was that? And you see Sasaki going, oh no! It's like, Hacha! As the Hacha is collapsing. You have, hey, Yamato just took Momonosuke down that hole. It's like, quit wasting time. Down the hole and after them. And you see, as Yamato's running away with Shinobu and Momo. And goes, Momonosuke, you must survive. It is imperative that you survive. You are the one who must guide the world to the dawn. And we have a doom. And you see second basement floor. As we finally see what Law has been up to. As he cuts down one of the gifters who's growing a giant garp-like dog head out of his chest. And you have the people of D are known as the enemies of the gods. And he's thinking back to what Korra told him. And you see, as he's cut his way down, he's standing in front of this poneglyph. It looks like it's like a little shrine area because it's got the little ropes on it hanging above it. It's got some lamps and everything stuck next to it as well. And you see Law thinking back to when he said, my true name is Trafalgar D. Waterlaw. It's like, your alias? It's like, that's right. All right, never mind. He's talking to Robin, apparently. So you have, I'm stunned. You have the name of D as well? I was just like, Robin's the only competent person I can trust. And he goes, you're the only one I would tell this. And she's like, thank you for your trust, but I don't have the answers for you. Luffy may not care, but I find the D name to be fascinating. And Law asks, so the only way is to follow the red stones? And she goes, yes, and that means beating the 4 emperors. Not that they'll make it easy. And you see him going, not this one, need a red stone. How many does that make Kaido? How does Kaido have now? Think about that. Law going, hey Korra, I've made up my mind. I want to know the meaning of this checkered fate. And you see back on the door floor, it's like something's coming this way. He's like, I took my weapon. I'm being swallowed. And you see, it's Eustace, Captain Kidd. and you see him going, "You think we've got enough, killer?" As he's doing his little arm attack, and he's got this giant trail of all his metal and weapons following him. And you see he's dragging along all the scrap metal in the castle. It's like, "Stop him! Don't let him reach the roof." And you see Killer going, "Fwa fwa." It's a good question. It's like, "There's Killer." His Killer just kind of sights through the little grunts. And he goes, "Our enemy is the world's strongest pirate. You can't have too much." And he's like, "Haha, good answer." He's like, "Onigashima, roof of the Skull Dome." You see Kaido back in his human form, just kind of angry as he's gritting his teeth, and he's just laying into the scabbards. He sends Kinemon flying with a smash, and you see the black Haki lightning kind of just flashing off his club. As you see Kinemon going flying with a thwud and bleeding, and you see a gank as he uses his club to smash into him again, I assume. And you see Dendro kind of coming up and stabbing him in the side, and you see a wham as a spurt of blood goes up, and you see all the scabbards are down for the count, apparently. Apparently, no match for Kaido, as he's kind of just slowly dragging his club behind him. And you see Performance Floor Skull Dome, and you have an, Big Mom's back! You see all the Straw Hats and everyone looking in surprise. And you have poor Chibi Chopper, half of him transformed into the Ice Oni, as he's crying and trying to make a cure. And you see Big Mom going, "Don't worry, I'm only interested in going up where Kaido is." And you see middle of the second floor. It's like, "Hurry, hurry! What floor are we on now? If we climb those stairs, we'll be at the third. The roof is above the fifth floor." And you have Luffy going, "Got it! Just you wait, Kinemon." You have, "Hey, do you guys hear that? Can't you hear it from the third floor?" It's like, "Hear what?" And you have an eek! Stomp, tromp, stomp, tromp. "Come, my dear, that's it." It's like, "But my lord, you mustn't. It would be so naughty." Honestly, like, can we just toss Shitji out an airlock, send him into space, fire him into a supernova, and just pretend he does not exist anymore? Like, the chapter was fine until this point, and then it instantly just nosedived in quality as soon as we got this stupid ass scene. All right, as usual, I'm gonna go from the start to the end with my thoughts before I dive into the Nami stuff and everything else. So, like I said, all the Tama for Straw Hat, everyone that's Tama for Straw Hat's probably losing their minds over this beginning scene of Tama, kind of taking a stance, trying to prove her mettle and her worth, and rushing into battle. Because I know a lot of people's kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Argument for like why Tama wouldn't be able to join, like become a Straw Hat, is because like, kids can't fight. They'd be kind of a burden in any situation. So I guess this will make them happy because, like, ha ha ha, Tama's trying to pretend she has the warrior spirit and everything. She's riding into battle. Again, at this point, like, I don't really have any particular investment in Tama as a character. It's like, yeah, she's a cute little kid. Yeah, it's like, it's great that she's, taking a more proactive role now and is trying to prove her mettle. I don't know how much Oda's actually going to let her, like, how much Oda's actually going to let her do. I still don't really buy into the theory that she's going to be a candidate for Straw Hat. I still think she's going to remain on Wano once the arc is done. But we'll see. Stranger things have happened. I think I want to just kind of mention it here, because I saw it mentioned elsewhere. The people pointed out that Momo, the whole tale of Momotaro the Peach Boy, who Momo was based on. Some people speculated that it might be like Tama and Momonosuke might play like both halves of that story. Because in that, the whole thing is like, with his Kibi dongos, the dumpling millet dumplings, Momotaro was able to tame a pheasant, a monkey, and a pheasant, a monkey, and a dog. And you have Tama kind of embodying that aspect of the role. And there's some theories about her potentially being Kurozumi. Those are all interesting, and if it plays out, could potentially lead to something. But right now, it's kind of like, all right, yeah, I guess we're finally starting to see some of the other important players finally coming into the fray. That's really all I have to say about that. I gotta say, I do really, really, really love Yamato, even though I'm still kind of wary about how Oda's handling his entire arc and his obsession with, being Kozuki Oden and everything else like that. Like, apart from that, like, I love that he's so, powerful and competent and everything else. And that, so far Oda has been handling him pretty respectfully, so hopefully that continues. Not much more to say. I'm really still just getting tired of Oda not giving us a concrete answer on what direction his storyline is going to go, like what the whole deal with him, his desperate kind of desire to embody Oden is, like whether it's going to be, he actually does have Oden's soul in him, or it's just going to be, because I don't know if I mentioned this in previous videos or not, but the idea of, Yamato being so insistent on, I'm Kozuki Oden kind of gave me or made me think about, the theme of masks I brought up with regards to Wano before, about how people are not who they appear, putting on false faces and things like that. It brought me to kind of an interrelated idea about how, of little kids kind of playing superheroes and being like, oh, playing dress up as Spider-Man, Batman, whatnot. So I wonder if that's more the direction that Oda's planning to take Yamato's kind of story arc, is, as a kid coming from an abusive household, where, he was basically imprisoned and never allowed to leave, and where, Oden's journals and like the story of Oden's adventures kind of became, his only means of escapism from his situation. I wonder if that's the direction Oda's kind of going with Yamato being like, oh, he's so insistent on saying he's Kozuki Oden, because he's basically kind of like those little kids playing dress up, being like, this person's someone I admire as a hero. And so, I'm kind of literally embodying that role, but just taking it, an extra step too far. That could be an interesting way to play it out. I still don't know if I trust Oda to handle that with the kind of nuance it would require to not make Yamato come off as, somewhat like delusional in some respects, because I'm still not a fan of how Oda misgendered him in his initial introduction, as saying, introducing him as like, I'm Kozuki Oden, having everyone call him Young Master, and then having the Oda box say, oh, self-proclaimed Kozuki Oden, Kaido's daughter. I'm still not a fan of that, and how a lot of One Piece fans have kind of hooked onto that as an excuse to misgender Yamato, and how a lot of them are kind of expecting that his arc is going to end with him being like, oh, this was just kind of a coping mechanism for me. So at the end, once I'm actually free of Kaido's influence and I can be myself again, then I'm going to go back to just being Yamato. And, and I was just, confused or whatnot. So there's still a lot of problematic ways this could play out. And I don't have enough faith in Oda to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he will handle it well. But honestly, fingers crossed that he does, because I don't want that to happen. I do like Yamato. I would like him to handle it respectfully, so we'll see what that happens. But with that said, another interrelated kind of idea I'm keenly interested on seeing if it actually plays out or goes anywhere is, again, I think I've mentioned this before, but I want to specifically bring it back to the superhero thing, because I still want confirmation on whether Vegapunk is the one that was behind Sora, Warrior of the Sea. Because unlike, Kaido's cyborg henchman being named Scotch, and one of the Yeti Cool brothers being named Scotch, I don't think it's a coincidence of like, oh, Oda just forgot that he had that Judge's wife, Sanji's mother, was named Sora. And you also have a comic about this marine warrior called Sora, Warrior of the Sea, that was very eerily accurate in depicting all of Germa and their powers, especially Sanji and his raid suit powers. I don't think that's a case of, this is like a historical thing in Germa where it's like, as the powers kind of like passed down throughout their generations. That's how they knew about it or anything like that. So I still want answers on with regards to that, because that could potentially tie into a Yamato story, but I might save those thoughts for another video once chapter 1000 hits, and if it does live up to the hype and Oda does drop some big bombs that'll kind of cement which direction this arc is going, that might be an interesting idea to consider. But like I said, Yamato stuff is good, except for the constant callbacks to Oden, because honestly he still is one of the worst written characters in the series, and like consistently just renaming him as like this big influence doesn't land with the impact that it does. I like how Sasaki got insulted that Yamato is like apparently taking him too lightly with this. But we'll see. I think that's the opposite case. I think Sasaki's looking down on Yamato too much. I don't know what the hell to deal with his. What the hell happened? Sorry, screen just kind of went to sleep for a second there. I don't know what the deal with his sword is, because there's either some kind of wrapping or some kind of weird stripy pattern on it. And as soon as Yamato saw that, I don't know if it was the act of drawing the sword that kind of triggered Yamato's transformation, or if it was something like the pattern on his sword triggered something and started making Yamato transform. Which I guess brings me to the other speculation thing to comment on this chapter. I am guessing, I'll have to go confirm this, but I am guessing a large swath of the big name One Piece YouTubers are going to see Yamato's transformation as confirmation on the very long held theory that Kaido is an actual dragon that ate, the mythical human model Oni fruit, or like model ogre fruit or something else, and that he's not actually, a dragon or something else, or an ancient giant, whatever, that ate the dragon fruit. I think a lot of people are going to see this as confirmation that's going to be the case, and that, Yamato is also a dragon that ate the human fruit. Because I theorized earlier on Twitter this week that maybe Yamato could potentially be a mythical tiger Zoan. Because in Japanese, the Asian mythology, there's the four cardinal directions kind of represented by the different animals. I think it was the turtle snake to the north, dragon to the east, phoenix to the south, and then tiger to the west. And then it finally hit me last week when I was thinking about, because I always thought Kaido's blue, like having Kaido be a blue dragon was kind of an odd aesthetic choice, until it hit me that the cardinal direction of like west is represented by an azure dragon, or not the west, for the east is represented by an azure dragon, and Kaido is an azure dragon. So that made a lot more sense. So that made me wonder if, the Yamato opposing Kaido's ideals and everything else, made me wonder if then Yamato's going to have the white tiger as his devil fruit, and it's going to have like a mythical tiger Zoan. So it's still very possible. Kind of got a semi-confirmation of it with this transformation. I know there's also popular theory floating around that Yamato would have gotten Toki's time fruit, which I think can now be laid to rest. So it'll be interesting to see when we finally do see Yamato fully transform, whether that's the case or not. But yeah, I'm honestly at this point really tired of Oda continually dragging out these reveals and trying to be like, oh, I'm going to keep you guessing. Isn't that so exciting? Like, I'm just going to tease you with what Yamada's going to be like. Oh, what's the fruit going to be like? What's his power? Oh, like it was cute the first little time, like hundreds of chapters in, when like early in the series when you were still in kind of that honeymoon phase. Like, yeah, it was fresh and exciting back then. At this point, 1,000 chapters into this series, it's just really irritating when he's constantly teasing these little tidbits with the assumption that there's going to be good payoff for it. Like the payoff that we'll eventually get for it will be worth, all the weight and the cock teasing and everything else. And at this point, I'm just tired of this shit because it's just, there's other ways to do this that don't like there's other ways to do storytelling that don't require you to kind of string your audience along to keep you invested in the story. And it's really just a cheap diversionary tactic to kind of just either shadow out characters or just hint at things and kind of reveal it later on. And I get that it's kind of the Shonen Jump model of like, we have to keep the readers coming back every week. And that means we have to kind of tease them so that they kind of anticipate, have this anticipation of what the answer is going to be. Now kind of reel them in. This series has been running for 1,000 chapters. I mean, at this point, stupid ass mysteries and misdirections like this are not the reason I'm reading, and it's not the reason I'm going to keep reading the series. So I'd rather Oda just do away with it rather than trying to be like, hee, I'm so clever, look at this, I'm just throwing out these tidbits. No, it's super, super irritating. But like I said, whatever. Frankie coming back, all right, again, not really much to comment on. The numbers, I think, are still the most lackluster and disappointing payoffs we've got. Like, they're the perfect example of what I just talked about, where the anticipation didn't really match the payoff that we got, with the numbers just kind of getting jobbed left and right. And I know people are going to tell me, like, oh, well, it's too early to say anything. The arc isn't over yet. Oh, you're being too harsh. Oh, you have to wait to see. You have to have faith in Oda. I don't give a shit about that. But like, yeah, I know that the numbers will probably eventually get up and it'll be like, oh, they're super durable and super strong and always creating like a false sense of security and everything. But it is just a little bit disappointing that there isn't really much of a challenge, like even a little bit of a challenge with these guys who are built up to be like, oh, the numbers, oh, they're big monsters, oh, they're so dangerous and everything. And they're all getting jobbed so easily. Like, at least I would have liked them to put up a little bit more of a fight before you had the reversal of everything else. But whatever, minor complaint. Again, I like Yamato is super strong. I really do love that. Can't wait to see, if he gets a one-on-one matchup or not, what his real power is going to be. Which brings me to the other, I guess, this whole like, oh, Momonosuke, like, it's imperative that you survive. You are the one, that will guide the world to its dawn. I don't know. Like, that's probably going to be Yamato. Like, we'll get some backstory at some point with regards to that. And Yamato will probably reveal like why he's so insistent on that. It'll probably have something to do with what Oden said. I don't think, well, Yamato might think that means like the literal dawn of the world, like, the thematic thing that keeps coming back. I don't think that's what it's going to be. But this kind of makes me a little bit more certain that this arc will probably end as the Fire Festival ends, when dawn is literally breaking over Wano. I suspect that's when the final blow will be, land on Kaido. That's when he'll be taken down. That's when we'll see, the definitive Straw Hat victory. So I'll have to see if that does play out the way it does. But yeah, it's interesting seeing the dawn symbolism. Like, this seems like something else Oda's kind of trying to like reiterate because it'll be important to the larger story at some point. But again, like, I think the reason I just don't care about this, like, these plot points don't intrigue me as much is the thing is, like, we know we're going to answer these plot points at some point in the future. And the thing is, like, Oda has to kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, kind of fill in the gap until that point, with the other meat of the arc, which is kind of like the current conflict with Kaido and everything else. I think that's when these kind of tidbits land the most effectively, is actual teases, that you're anticipating coming into the future. But it has to be kind of tempered with a current storyline that keeps you engaged with what's happening. And for Wano, that's always been kind of something that I've been continually critical of and kind of looking for as a point where this fight does become engaging. Because then again, it's another point. No, fans will kind of say like, "Oh, it's just because we're reading week to week. Oh, once you read it all together, it'll be flow so much better and everything else." But I don't care about any of the fights or any of the characters or anything like that. So, when you have like all these teases tied to the story, when I'm not really invested in the story, it's kind of hard to be interested or anticipating, the answers to all these questions when I'm not really invested in the story of it in and of itself, which I think is why it's so much of this falls flat, like this whole dawn symbolism that Oda keeps reiterating. I think the example, like a best example I can use to describe it is I'm going to borrow something my good friend, the Black Manga Critic, once said about this. Is it's like those Scooby snacks, like Oda keeps using these tidbits, like little Scooby snacks, to kind of like whet your appetite and get you excited for what's coming. And the thing is, like, yeah, when you first have Scooby snack a few times, it's like, oh yeah, it's new and interesting, and you love the flavor, and you really like eating it. And it's like it becomes familiar to you after a while. It's like, yeah, you really love it, etc., etc. It goes on, and for those initial times, it really works because hey, it's new, exciting, fresh, and flavorful, and so it works. But as it goes on, like the Scooby snacks are kind of like been put on the shelf for a while. The next time you eat them, they get a little bit stale, or maybe they changed up the flavor and the ingredients aren't the same. That's how I feel about these little tidbits Oda's tossing out now. It's the same shape as a Scooby snack, and everything looks all the same, but it just doesn't taste the same anymore. So weird kind of metaphor, I admit, but Scooby snacks, yeah. Honestly, ever since you use it, I'm like, you know what? It is the perfect description of what it is, because it's like this enticing little treat, that no matter how much you hate, being put into danger or how much you want to do something, it's just that little thing that entices you to keep hanging on. And up to this point, like that's one of the reasons I keep reading One Piece, is like, all right, and like, the mysteries that Oda laid the groundwork for earlier in the series, they were one of the big things that one of the big reasons I read this series, like, all right, I want answers to those someday, because they were intriguing back then. But now at this point, it's kind of like lost its appeal, especially as Oda just keeps kind of like pushing it further and further and further for when he's eventually gonna like give you an answer to what it is. And so at this point, it's like, all right, man, I'm just so fucking tired. Just give me the damn treat and tell me what it is. But that said, let's keep going. The Law scene is funny. Like, I love how Law's like, yeah, I'm gonna have everyone do the hard work while I just go skulk around, doing my own shit. I don't know. Like, the feeling I got from this scene was that Oda's trying to reinstate Law as like a potential rival for Luffy as Pirate King, and I still do not buy that at all. Like, it's great now he's apparently got like a goal or purpose beyond, just hiking down Kaido. Because this whole thing initially was like, oh, I'm going to take down Doflamingo or die trying. That's it. That's everything I live for. I have no purpose beyond that. So it's like, all right, yeah, finally he's got a goal beyond that, I guess, to keep him relevant to the story and keep him, tagging along for whatever. I still wish he was more of a rival and wasn't just, an ally that's just kind of tagging along just because he got so popular. And Oda's like, all right, fans love him, so I guess I'll keep him around. But we'll see. So I think we've now got confirmation there's 3 poneglyphs on Wano because there's one Brook saw underneath the palace somewhere in that room with the Kokeshi dolls. There's the road poneglyph, which Law is apparently still looking for. And so there's another one apparently also below Onigashima. So I guessing we're getting a huge info dump at the end of this arc. Captain Kidd is also back. Man, like there was one moment earlier in this arc where I'm like, oh, Kid's finally become an interesting character because up to this point it's like, all right, he's your generic edgelord. There's nothing particularly interesting about him. I don't really care about him at all, even though he's apparently like one of the top 3 rivals for the role of Pirate King. And you have that one moment where he had that bit of humanity where he's like, lashing out about Killer and what they've done to him, and you see like how much he cares for him. And I'm like, all right, you finally have my interest, Kid. I'm interested in seeing, become a more complex and rounded character. And Oda just described it, and Oda just decided, nope, screw that. Kid's gonna disappear for 2 weeks, show back up again when the raid happens, and he's going back to square one again. He's gonna become his generic edgelord again. So I was a disappointment that Kid ends up like that. Morning Rain said, perfect way to describe it, though. Shout out to BMC. BMC has those good metaphors. Shout out to him. But yeah, and then we have Killer and them going up to the roof. So I assume that he and Luffy are pretty much going to end up on the roof at the same time. And at the pace they're going, they're probably going to end up there either end of 998 or 999. They're probably going to end up on the roof and confront Kaido. And so Kaido's just like, all right, apparently he's dragon form is not as powerful as his base form, where he's now just jobbing the samurai and just like taking out his anger on them. Again, like I'm pretty ambivalent to this fight overall. I don't really care about the samurai, so that seeing them getting beaten doesn't really tug on any emotional heartstrings or stuff like that. On the other hand, I've already kind of talked about how Oda's handled the power scaling with Kaido, so I don't really have anything much more to add to that. I suspect when Kid and Luffy do get to the roof, I suspect that's when we might potentially see him go into his hybrid form and then finally start laying waste into them, but still a while to go, so we'll see how the rest of these chapters play out. Big Mom, I don't know. What do I even say about her at this point? Like, she's such a pointless character. Like, Oda's just tossing her wherever he wants her to be at any point. And the thing is, like, Big Mom could have been a really good kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a ticking time bomb almost. Where you could have been like, oh, she could have turned the tides of this battle at any point, and she could have been a legitimate threat that could have tipped the scales in one side's favor. But she's kind of just, it's like Oda kind of seems to be just keeping her out of the way right now, just kind of keeping her running back and forth because it doesn't seem like he knows what he really wants to do with her or what her motivations or anything are. So, seeing her flying in, seeing her flying up to like help out Kaido or whatever, again, doesn't really fill me with any kind of sense of like dread or anticipation or anything like that. It's kind of like, all right, yeah, pieces are moving around, I guess. How interesting. It brings us to the end. Oh my god, how much I hate Shitji so goddamn much. Like, whatever this stupid fucking plot point ends up being, it's going to be bad. I don't think there is any universe in which this is going to be a justifiable distraction that's going to be like, oh yeah, this was totally worth it to have like this be a cliffhanger. It's gonna like it eats. Because my guess is it's probably gonna be Black Maria that's doing this. It's probably gonna be like I had to go like look at some research and things of like people that do the analysis. Because they'll probably be like, oh, this is actually a callback to like some comedy skit or something like that, and it's gonna be some kind of dumb joke that it lands on. It could also just end up being something super transphobic and problematic. Because given Sanji's character, like that would be something Oda would think it's funny. Like, ha ha ha, he thinks it's a beautiful woman undressing, but it's actually not. Ha ha ha, isn't that so funny? Like, I don't know if Oda even knows why people used to love Sanji anymore, or if he's just so far removed from what he is, what he was. Oda's just like, oh, like Oda's just forgotten. He's like, oh, people must just really love these gimmicks of how much of a creep he is. Let me just keep amplifying that. Like it's just incredibly stupid and dumb. Do not care for it at all. Morning Rain said, do you have any predictions for chapter 1000? I do. I will get to that after the next little point I want to talk about with regards to Nami, because I was actually talking to my little bro about this earlier, and this is one of the things where I'm just like, this is one of those things where I'm like, all right, if Oda was a good storyteller that I could count on, to be consistent, these are the ways I could see this story going. But because Oda is so inconsistent in how he approaches the story, I'm kind of just like throwing my hands into the air because I'm like, it could go so many different ways. And right now, we just don't have enough information to predict it. But let me cover a few more things. I'll kind of dive into my predictions for chapter 1000. Morning Rain also said, Oda just keeps putting dirt on Big Mom's character. Tough to see. Yeah, because here's the thing. I'll touch on Big Mom's character, I suppose, before I get into everything else. A lot of the fandom seems convinced that this arc is going to see both the emperors being taken down, that we're going to see Big Mom and Kaido getting taken down, in this arc. I still do not buy that's going to happen. I still think narratively it makes sense that Big Mom's arc is going to end on Elbaf. And I'm also 99% certain that Big Mom is going to end up being revealed to be a sympathetic character who will eventually turn out to be an ally. And I'm like also relatively sure that the only reason Oda bought her here to Elbaf was to make it easier for him to plot, to introduce the plot lines for how she's going to get to Elbaf, chasing after the Straw Hats. But yeah, she has so much potential to be a compelling character and villain, but because of how Oda writes women, it's like it just keeps fumbling the football, and it really is painful to see. And Oral Leaf's like pre-time skip Sanji and post-time skip Sanji are two different characters. Honestly, like I think around like after Water 7 was when his character just kind of became irreversibly separated and differentiated from what everyone initially found appealing about him. And honestly, at this point, if you still stand Sanji, I cannot see for the life of me what you see in his character at this point. He's become like the most pathetic character in the entire series. And it's just kind of like sad to see like a character who was so introduced as being so suave, suave and put together, turn into an incel. Like that's all I can really say is he went from James Bond to incel. And I cannot think of any other series in which such a dramatic change has happened to a character where they went from this end to that end so quickly. Right. Nami stuff before I forget. Then I'll get into kind of like chapter 1000 predictions and everything. Because I was going around like looking at forums and everything last week to kind of see what people's opinions were on that Nami scene and why it hit them more so than it hit me emotionally. And the one kind of repeated thing I kept seeing brought up was this idea that the scene was so impactful and so powerful because Nami truly believed that she was going to die, at Ulti's hands. And despite all of that, despite everything, despite her past, trauma with what happened with Bellamere, despite her, desire to be a survivor and everything else, she put all of that aside to kind of accept her inevitable fate and kind of stick to her values. And people are talking about, how that's such a massive character development, character growth for her, from where she initially was. And the thing is, like, so much of that hinged on this idea, like, Nami believed she was going to die. And fans are treating that like, fans are treating that as being like, oh, Nami legitimately thought she was going to die. And yes, there was actually a chance that she was going to die, which is the thing that bugs me about it more so than anything else is like, all right, suspension of disbelief, is important to any story because any author wants you to be immersed in their world. So when they introduce things like magic systems, whatever, when they try to tell, introduce new laws of physics, whatever, they rely on the readers. God, what did I even say? And I just forgot it now. Yeah, suspension of disbelief. Rely on the reader's suspension of disbelief, for any of the stuff they introduce, any of the things they want you to believe to be believable, like any plot point they introduce to do that. And the problem is the moment you break that suspension of disbelief, the moment you break the reader's immersion and pull them out of the story, that's the moment where it kind of just loses the impact and it becomes exponentially harder to get your reader to kind of re-immerse themselves back into it again once you kind of broken the kind of hypnotic spell you put them under. And the thing with One Piece is Oda, especially post time skip, Oda has continually over and over and over again kind of teased this idea of like, oh, all these characters are dying, like all this character potentially died. Oh no, like, oh, you're all sad now. And then he's immediately undercut it by revealing that they're either alive or that the character was badly beaten up, got instantly healed, or something like that. So at this point in the story, I have absolutely no faith in Oda whenever he tells me, a character is seriously injured or a character might potentially die or, get maimed, some whatever. No part of me legitimately believes that there is a possibility that these characters will face irreparable harm at any point in the story. So when these people are trying to convince me, like, oh, this moment's so impactful because Nami thought she was going to die, I cannot buy into it because no part of my brain will accept the notion that Nami could have potentially died at that point in the story. That's not to say that, she herself as a character didn't believe it. That part is not what I'm debating. But if I, as a reader, don't buy into that, it doesn't matter how hard the character buys into it. If I don't buy into it, it's not going to make a difference. And so the impact won't be there. I think that's the biggest reason why that Nami scene didn't land is Oda's undercut his own storytelling so many goddamn times with these stupid fake outs or, the magical milk that'll fix broken teeth and bones to the point where it's hard to believe, death is ever a possibility in the series anymore. And I really don't get how so many fans can still buy into the delusion that it is a possibility. Because I'm seeing so many YouTubers be like, oh, I think chapter 1000 is going to be, Luffy going up onto the roof and seeing some or all of the scabbards dead or dying. And that's what's going to make him mad. And he's going to lay into Kaido. And that's what's going to be the final conflict and everything. I'm like, there is not a single chance in hell any of the scabbards die during Wano or are dead. Will Oda try to pretend that they are and do a stupid fake out where he wants you to believe that they're dead? Sure, that's a huge possibility. Are they actually going to be dead by the time Wano wraps up and we're doing this end of the arc celebration? Not a chance. That is not going to happen, and I really don't understand how people buy into it. That said, predictions for chapter 1000. That honestly kind of depends on a couple of things. To my mind, the question that kind of needs an answer, at least a more definitive one, is this arc going to end on Onigashima, or are they going to change locations back to the Flower Capital? Which means that, are they going to have to regroup? Are they going to face a defeat, have to regroup, and then mount a second attack, or is this the climax of the arc? Is the final showdown on the roof going to be the one where Kaido gets taken down? And that also kind of leads into the other speculation, because I know there is a certain popular, One Piece person who's large in the fandom, who's talked about, their closeness to Oda and everything else, and whose opinions are kind of taken as word of God. And they've said that, because everyone's kind of anticipating that Wano is going to be 5 acts, and that, that Act 3 usually has the moment of dramatic tension where, there's a huge, there's some kind of huge loss, something happens, and then after that, that's when Act 4 has like the big battle sequence, and Act 5 is like a little bit of a closer that wraps everything up in a neat little bow tie. And this person has kind of been adamantly against the idea that there's going to be more than 3 acts on one, and like this is going to be the final act. So a lot of people are kind of speculating or saying that chapter 1000 is going to be, the end of Act 3, with Luffy showing up on the roof, seeing the scabbards dead, and be like, done, Act 3 end. I don't know if I buy that necessarily. Trying to think of how to phrase this. More than I said, I agree with you. I, as a reader, never buy into it. After Pal survived in Alabasta, I knew we would see it throughout the series. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think the problem is that Marineford kind of made it a potential possibility again. Because going into Marineford, I 100% did not expect that Whitebeard or Ace would die. I thought it was going to be it'll be a fake out, but it'll be worth it. I did not expect Oda to actually commit. And I think that's what's kind of lulled people into this delusion, is because it's Marineford showed the possibility of death is now a thing in One Piece, so it can happen at any time. And I'll admit, I'm also being a little bit hypocritical by saying I don't believe this, because I've also been kind of harping on this idea that narratively Kaido has to die for his arc to conclude. I fully expect Kaido to be killed once he's taken out. I expect Blackbeard to kill Kaido at some point. So maybe it's a little bit hypocritical for me to say one death is not a possibility in One Piece. But I don't know, maybe for me it's a bit more of a belief that'll happen in, certain specific moments, but it's not going to be a thing that just happens willy-nilly kind of throughout the thing. But Relief ultimate plot twist, Pedro deals the final blow on Kaido. Oh my god, good thing you brought up Pedro, because again, Pedro is another example where people harp on him as being a prime example of oh, how are you saying death isn't a possibility in One Piece when Pedro's died? It's yeah, well, Pound was also assumed to be dead, and we saw how all that turned out. 150 chapters later, Pound just came sailing back into it. So I don't really buy that Pedro is dead. I still fully expect him to kind of show up at some point. during this arc. But we'll see. I don't know. But chapter 1000 prediction. So here's the one where I'm just like, there is not a chance in hell that this will ever happen because it is way too ballsy a move for Oda to do. I was talking to my little bro about it, and we kind of like decided like we really like this idea because with Yamato now having confirmed that he has a Zoan fruit and not Toki's time fruit, it puts into question like, all right, who has Toki's time fruit? I think the best guess right now is that Hiyori probably inherited the fruit from her mother, and she probably has it. And we still have no idea where she is or how she's going to be potentially involved in the arc going forward. So I really love the idea of Luffy being, Hiyori using her powers on Luffy to send him 1 year into the future, on back to the Fire Festival night again, and having all the other Straw Hats be left behind, and having them suffer a year of torture under Kaido to have their spirits broken, and for them to kind of have to rise up back from out of that to take him on again. I don't think Oda would do that. I don't think he's ballsy enough to pull a move like that. So without that possibility happening, I think chapter 1000 will have to end. I think it's going to be Kaido's hybrid form reveal, and we'll get official confirmation of what his fruit is exactly. Like if he is the dragon fruit user, I think we'll get official confirmation in chapter 1000 when he goes into his hybrid form that that's what he is. That's my guess. Because I don't think there's enough room or time for Oda to do anything else or introduce anyone else before chapter 1000. So I think that's the best thing he can do to kind of deliver on the hype, is just show off Kaido's hybrid form, because it is kind of suspicious up to this point he hasn't shown Kaido going into his hybrid form. So there's got to be a reason for it, apart from Oda's never-ending need to kind of always be like, oh, I have to be surprised. So I'm going to put that as my official prediction, is Kaido's hybrid form. I don't think we're even remotely close to the end of Act 3 yet. I still think Act 3 is going to end once the Straw Hats are taken down, but we'll have to see. I'm just kind of hoping Chapter 1000 does give us a better idea of what direction this arc is going to go, because right now there's just too many balls in the air until we see where they land. I think it's kind of hard to predict definitively which direction the arc will take, but we'll see. That said, before I wrap it up, one final thought. Don't feel like I should need to really address it. I guess I'll kind of just touch on it. Tama said at the beginning she had ridden in on an enemy ship. If I had to take a guess, my bet is on Big Mom's ship being the one she hitched a ride on. That would just make the most narrative sense, because they're there and because Perospero is in trouble. It would make sense that his, brothers and sisters show up as a cavalry to help him out. That said, I've also, for the longest time, like since Wano started and even before, I've been kind of adamantly insisting that we are going to see other forces show up during this arc. I've been saying the Marines are going to show up at some point. The Revolutionaries will potentially show up. Blackbeard is one of those ones I'm insisting he's going to have to show up, if just for the sake of Moria to show up along with him and get closer to his arc. But I have expected several different disparate forces to make their way to Wano at some point. Whether that's going to happen during the arc itself or after the arc is kind of up for debate. So Oda could use this whole Tama's enemy ship thing to do any of those. I think odds are still best that it's probably just going to end up being Big Mom's ship. But we'll see. Yeah, I think that's all I really have to say. I really hope all my theories, predictions, and everything else aside, the only thing I want from chapter 1000 is for this arc to finally get to the point where I am invested in the story and the struggles. Right now, up to this point, it's kind of like, yeah, there's enjoyable bits. There's good moments here or there. But the problem is, like, Oda's introduced so many, like, cool and interesting concepts, and he hasn't really delivered on any of them. And so I'm debating, like, I might potentially do this depending on how Chapter 1000 plays out, is do an updated video regarding my ideas, like, of what themes and stuff he's introduced, what he's addressed, and how it could potentially be addressed or play out for the rest of the arc. So depending on Chapter 1000, how the next few go, I will look into that and see if I want to do a video on it. But yeah, I'm just waiting for the point. I'm just like, I want to feel something about this series again rather than just ambivalence. But all I'm getting is ambivalence, and I really hate it. But I'm not going to pretend like I'm enthused about something I'm not. Warning me somehow that's actually something I want to happen now after hearing you say that. I've just been constantly like hoping, like, there's like all the pieces are there. And if Oda just kind of bought them together, like, this arc could be really good despite being lackluster so far. But I don't know, like, there's so many, like, I don't know how much to really buy into the idea of, like, he's rushing it because he wants to really meet that 5-year deadline. But I will have to see. But that's it. Like, I am supremely adamant. Like, you know what? I probably, after Chapter 1000, I think I am going to do an updated kind of like discussion video regarding my ideas, because there is a lot of them, and I think I can't do it justice by just kind of spitballing here like I am. So I'll probably do some kind of video talking about it, like what things I expect and why and all those things. So probably do a video just kind of breaking that down. You see, I'm hoping Chapter 1000 revives my love for One Piece. Like, yeah, honestly, I'm hoping the same, or at least I'm hoping there's a tidbit or a morsel that's juicy enough that, it kind of just whets my appetite enough that I'm like, you know what, Oda, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt just this once, because that morsel was just so juicy and so delicious that I'm willing to see where you're going to take it. I'm hoping for that kind of moment to come through in Chapter 1000, because, despite, my ambivalence, like, I like criticisms of Wano so far, it's had those moments where, the series, where Oda's kind of reminding me, like, hey, he still has the skills to be able to, tell a good story. He's just not flexing them hard enough right now. So I just wanted to kind of just go back to his roots and just kind of like focus on telling a good story rather than trying to do spectacle. And yeah, rather than just trying to focus on spectacle, but we'll see. Because there's 3 chapters now until Chapter 1000. And I was looking at this earlier because it looks like there's no break next week either. I think this is the longest. I think this is the longest stretch that Oda's gone where he hasn't taken a break. I still don't think we're going to Chapter 1000 this year. I think Chapter 1000 is going to be the first chapter of 2021. But looking at the schedule, if Oda does not take any breaks for the rest of this year, then Chapter 1000 could be the one we get dropped right before the Christmas and New Year break that Jump has. So we could potentially do that. So then drop something really big in Chapter 1000, so that, we have all the fans spend 2 weeks speculating on what's going on. But we'll have to wait and see. Stick on to, I think reviving my love is impossible at this point, but it could bring back interest. Probably not, though. Yeah, honestly, I don't think, like, there's so many things Oda would have to do to kind of get my investment and love for the series back to where it was, when it was at its peak. Like, there'd have to be so many changes he'd have to do. but there's things he could do that like pique my interest enough that I wouldn't just be reading the series weekly, like out of spite or just like ambivalence or like a host of other reasons that I'd be reading it weekly. I'd actually I'd actually like to be reading the series weekly out of interest rather than just a host of other things. But we'll have to see. Like right now, these last few chapters are kind of proven that yeah, he's building up to something for chapter 1000. Like the pacing and everything's kind of showing that he's got something close to his chest. He's probably going to reveal it. We'll have to see whatever it is because like he's moving the pieces around. We'll see if the payoff is worth it or not. But yeah, we shall see what we shall see. But like I said, as always, appreciate everyone that comes through for these streams. Having these back and forth comments, discussions, really do make these a lot more fun. Really makes it a lot more bearable to go reading through this series. Morning, I'm hanging around mainly to see what he does with Hiyori and Yamato's characters. Yeah, honestly, at this point, like that's one of the other reasons I'm reading. Like, depending on what answers we get to these, will determine whether I drop the series or not. But I want to see what happens with Kiku and Yamato specifically in Wano, because I've talked about this before. Because of potentially Crocodile also being a transgender character. I'm still deeply, deeply suspicious. Like there might be no deep reason behind why Oda suddenly decided to introduce, two transgender characters, given his deeply problematic and storied history with how he's presented queer characters in the series before. So I'm kind of hanging around to see how he handles Yamato and Kiku specifically. And I'm also waiting for Crocodile, my favorite character, to make a reappearance because I have so many expectations and hopes for Crocodile's character going forward. And I just want kind of like a definitive answer on whether Oda's going to deliver or if he's going to let me down. Because if he lets me down, then I can just be like, you know what? All right, that was the last thing I needed closure on. And now I can just drop this series without any other worries. But till then, just going to be hanging around. Morning Rain's a great reaction ask. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you very much. I'm glad you all enjoyed it. I know I'm not as popular as other YouTubers, for constantly talking shit about the series. But yeah, as long as you all enjoy, that's all I really need. A few quick housekeeping things, I suppose, before I close up here. I'm going to try to get around to doing a reaction to more of Lazarus this weekend. So it'll either be later this afternoon or evening, depending on everything else, or it'll probably be tomorrow sometime. And then I'm also going to try to get around to the next volume of Monstrous, which I finally got the next volume on hold as well. So I'm looking forward to both of those. So expect both of those either tonight or tomorrow, probably tomorrow. But yeah, look forward to those. And yeah, until next time, this is Ash. I will talk to you all later. But yeah, I think after next week, we'll see. Because depending on how, I'll either find a Shonen Jump schedule that kind of gives me an idea if there's any breaks or stuff coming in December. Because I have some other One Piece videos and things I want to do as well. So depending, I'll try to find a schedule and I'll try to plan those videos around that in lieu of doing these reactions. But I don't know, we might be surprised and end up just doing reactions weekly if Oda decides he wants to just power through to chapter 1000. But that said, this video has gone on for quite a long time. As always, if you like my videos, please do like, comment, and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 150 subscribers before the end of this year, and I'm only 16 away from getting there, so it'd be really, really great if I could reach that number and that milestone. And yeah, so as always, this is Ash. Thank you all for tuning in. Until next time, talk to you all later.